Welcome to the Why Music podcast, where we talk to independent artists about their journeys, the inspirations behind their music, and ultimately why they make music. This next artist is a Seattle-based R&B singer-songwriter. Discovering her passion for music at a young age, she's been following her greatest passion for several years and is on a mission to connect hearts and souls through the power of melodies. Welcome, Gabrielle.
Hi, happy to be here.
Happy to have you. I always like to start with where your music journey kind of all began.
Mhm. well, my family is pretty creative. My mom's a poet. My dad kind of writes a little bit. My sister is a visual artist. She draws. Um, but I think it just kind of came pretty young, getting into like Disney movies, and my favorite was Cinderella with Brandy in it, Brandy and Whitney Houston. And when I saw that movie, it was like I see someone that looks like me. And not only that, but they're beautiful, they're talented. And I look at it and I'm like, I want to do that. That's cool. So I think it really just started there, just movies and musical movies all day long. I would watch them on repeat all the time. So much so that my parents would get annoyed with me.
Um, how did that kind of transition into, singing and writing and then
hmm
ultimately kind of where things are at today and being an artist?
hmm Um, Honestly, it didn't start kind of really kicking in probably until fourth or fifth grade. Um, but I mean, I know that sounds like super duper young still, but but I don't know. I think it was kind of just something that I gravitated to, um, especially because my mom has incredible taste in music. So we'd be listening to music all day, every day, doing any and everything. She'd be cooking, there's music on. Um, Sometimes because I grew up in a Christian household, so we would have like prayer and like she would have like worship music on, or yeah, just road trips, music constantly. So really I just got interested in trying to mimic what the artists were doing, and then it just kind of stuck.
Um, I mean, yeah, that's trying to mimic can be very interesting depending on who it is, and you really kind of figure out quickly, okay, this is for me. This is a little bit
Yeah,
out of my wheelhouse here. Um,
exactly.
So through that, do you think that like a lot of what you were consuming and who might have been easier to mimic than others kind of fed
hmm
into how you developed as a performer and as an artist and kind of also even bled into your writing and stuff like that?
Oh yeah. Funny enough, I guess like just from my mom's musical taste, I was listening to a lot of mature music early, like not mature necessarily in like content per se, but just like word choice and melody choices and things like that. So it was almost second nature to kind of catch those things. And I like words, like I don't know, like I like words. So words themselves are kind of intriguing to me. So trying to figure out, okay, you said this thing, but what does that actually mean? And then why did you choose this specific melody or, lyrical phrasing? Like, how did you get that pairing? So it was kind of my wheels going, trying to figure out how that all connected. And I went down the rabbit hole.
But a good rabbit hole. That's not a bad rabbit hole to go
Oh yeah.
down.
Yeah.
Um, so then when it came to deciding to pursue like the artistry thing and like really
hmm
kind of be that then like as your own, what kind of went
Mhm.
into that? Like, how did you decide to commit that this is what I'm going to do? You know, I'm writing stuff. I want to actually like pursue this for real. Where did that kind of come about?
Yeah. Probably when I was a teenager. So I want to say like 14 or 15. Um, I kind of just caught myself writing more. Like journaling was always fun to me. Um, but I would try to figure out how to actually construct a song and what made a good song. So at that point, I was like, okay, maybe I should start listening a little closer to what I think is a good song and see if I can do it. So I heavily got into Mariah Carey in in like high school. So I was listening to every single one of her albums trying to figure out like how did you get this word? Like what does that mean? How does that connect with the emotion you're trying to, get the audience member to feel? Um yeah. Yeah, it was really just that and then um trying to understand how to use my own voice and what that meant.
So, what does that mean?
It means for me, especially as a kid, I was pretty honestly still am pretty shy. Um, so I would use writing as honestly a tool for like my own self-expression. So if I wasn't comfortable saying something out loud, I know that I could write it down on paper and I wouldn't have to translate to anybody else what I meant. I already knew what I meant. So it it's a way for me to feel like I can connect with other people um and not feel like I have to mince words when I say what I say because it's not always easy for me to verbalize things from person to person. But if I write it down, it's easier for me to just be like, okay, I wrote this. Now I'm just going to say it, or I'm going to sing it, or yeah.
It's like an indirect way of like saying everything that you want to say without actually having to like have those words come like straight out of your mouth. Like it's like, yeah, like did
Yeah.
I write those words? Yeah. Am I singing those words? Yeah. But am I going to say those words to your face? Absolutely not. You know? No, you can't catch me saying that for real. You know, if it's in a song, it's just casual. Can't be serious about this.
Yeah. I mean, ultimately, I feel like just based off of things that I've written and things I've released or plan to in the future, certain people will know that I'm talking about them. And I've kind of just gotten to the point where I'm like, well, if they know, they know. If they don't, they don't. And it's okay.
You know, it's that's just how it is, you know.
Yeah,
If you were written about and it was in a good context, you did something right. If you were written about and it was in an
exactly.
unfortunate context, maybe you shouldn't have screwed up.
Yeah, yeah.
Maybe we should have made a little bit different choices, huh?
Yeah, unfortunately, I got a lot of those songs where they're not necessarily putting the person in the best light, but it made for good music. That's
Oh,
all I'll
it
say.
it
Thank
always
you for the
does.
inspiration.
It always does. Um, with that, what do you find most often inspires a lot of your songwriting?
Um, Honestly, it's definitely personal experience based. I've always had a hard time writing things that I don't know firsthand. Uh, that's kind of just what naturally comes out, but I can understand at least a little bit how to get to the core of someone else's experience and go from there. Um, yeah. So I kind of envy writers that know how to write things that they have no experience with. So hopefully at some point I can get to that point in my artistry where I can say, I've never been through that, but I feel like they may feel this way, or maybe do just a little more research and say, okay, this is what this person who's had this experience is going through. How would I feel if I went through that?
Are there any particular like experiences or situations that you're like, man, I wish I could like write something that kind of tells this story, but it's just not it for me?
Um, Funny enough, love. I love songs. And for me, love and heartbreak were the two things that kind of went together. So I know how to write heartbreak really well. Um, but for, even though I'm in a very happy relationship now, it's still hard for me to write like an I love you kind of song. Even though I love my partner very, very much, it's still like how do I get there? How do I actually say what I'm trying to say without it sounding too cheesy?
Yeah. I think as timeless as like love songs will continue to be, at the same time, it's like how many more different ways can we say this same kind of thing without it sounding like
Exactly.
somebody's already said it 100 times?
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. I don't want it to be like, I love you, you're my everything. Like it's just kind of like every love song does that in some form or facet. And
Hmm.
I don't want to say the same thing over and over and over again. I feel like there are ways to do it, but I haven't found it yet.
Mm. Yeah, those are also like the most like rewarding situations when it's something that you find like let's say like 3 years from now, it's like, oh, I finally like wrote about the thing that I've been like wanting
Yeah.
for like so long, and it just like finally happened. It's like I just
Yeah.
waited for it. Sometimes you just try and force it, and it's
Hmm.
just like this is just not clicking. But if you just like sit on
Yeah.
it, that time will come. That random thought will come into your head, some random like Tuesday afternoon,
Yeah.
and you'll be like, there it is, we got it.
Exactly. Yeah, because you can tell when something is forced.
Mm. Yeah.
I think not just as a creator, but as a consumer, you can tell when a song is forced and you're like, that doesn't sound good, but okay. Or, or I mean, it could be a matter of personal taste, but generally, I think that consumers are not dumb. Like they know how to pay attention, so they know when something is good or bad, or at the very least, you have to take a second and think about, is this actually good? Do I like it? Why do I like it? Like I feel like that is at the base of, what a consumer may think, but I don't know. That's just me thinking about it.
Very analytical. I like it. Um, so then, and I 100% agree. I think if you force like it's like if you try and make it happen, it's almost like it's like less likely to happen sometimes, which is interesting.
Yeah.
With that in mind, how do you maintain any sort of like consistency in like the creative elements if like trying to avoid forcing anything like is what's the trick
Hmm.
then? That's the like age old conversation. It's like creativity comes naturally, but then like also if you want to like make a living off of it,
Hmm.
you have to do things consistently. So it's like where for you
Yeah.
do you kind of find those two meeting?
Yeah. I'm still kind of trying to find my specific rhythm with it, but I think what helps me the most is when I get stuck on something to listen to other things. So instead of trying to like make myself sit down for 2 hours trying to get this one thing right, um, listen to some songs that I feel like are along the same theme and think about how they wrote this thing. What word choices did they use? Um, what melodies did they use? How can you tell how much time they spent trying to use a maybe like super like intense vocabulary word, or if it's something super simple and you could just not dumb it down, but make it really easy to understand without it being like a, you know, college level word.
Again, very analytical. Um, but I like it. No, I think that is like somewhat of a sweet spot of like, I'm not trying to force this idea or this specific thing to
hmm
happen or this project to get finished, but it's putting
hmm
yourself in a situation where you're almost enabling that to happen. It's like surrounding yourself with other forms of inspiration and ideas and just kind of seeing
hmm
what's going to stick or just ultimately like what might, come out of this. Sometimes you have to like step away and
Yeah.
like work on something else or look at something else, and then it's like, oh, something that I was doing over here
Yeah,
didn't really work here, but it's like working over here. And then it's like, regardless of
exactly.
where it is, somewhere we're making progress here.
Yeah, I recycle lyrics all the time. So in just in random journals I found over the years, I'm like, okay, I'm stuck on something. What's something else that I've written that I know for a fact I'm still struggling to finish? Can I use this lyric here? Or can I think about how to maybe change the rhythm or the pacing to make something work a little better? Um, yeah, there are a couple songs that I have out that I've gone back years and years and years, even when I looked at it and I'm like, this other song is really bad. But, but this specific line is really good. So let me use this and put it here and see how well it flows. And then it's helped me finish a good chunk of songs actually.
You have a method and it works. That's all there is to it. You just, plug and play, see what happens, see what maybe doesn't, and just run with what works. And
Yeah.
if it ain't broke, don't fix it. So just got to keep pulling from the old journals and everything. Just start plugging ideas in.
hmm
Um, if you had to create a new genre around your style of music, what would you call it?
Oh, that's an interesting question. Hmm. I feel like I'm kind of sort of a mixed bag with a lot of the things I like to listen to. Um, Mainly R&B, but I like a lot of like the electronic or like alternative R&B a little more. Um, but still has those like elements of like classic R&B soul. Um, Definitely into a little bit of rock here and there. Yeah, I feel like that's a tricky thing to like figure out how to call it, like what I would title it specifically, but it definitely is kind of like a choose your own adventure.
It can be. But is there anything that you think like I think when I ask this question a lot, people get very narrowed in on like what they would categorize
hmm
themselves from like what exists, like a like
Yeah.
pop rock, like hybrid or something, like something just
Yeah.
like putting these words together. But is
hmm
there any just like I think of it more from like a vibe perspective or like an energy perspective as like
Ah,
crazy
gotcha. Okay.
spiritual as everything that sounds. I mean like just in like a like what kind of like what's the vibe? What am I taking away from like if you just
hmm
like what word are you just kind of throwing in there that I'm like that's gonna be like, okay, I know kind of what I'm getting myself into here without necessarily
Yeah.
like music context. You could always like I get a lot of like something pop or like, like further categorization
hmm
within like a realm of something. So like what's your something
Right.
R&B?
Dreamscape.
Okay. Why?
I don't know when this came to me, but I liked the way it sounded. Um, and it's kind of like a more ethereal, heady, kind of like you can kind of sit back, vibe with it, takes you on a little journey. You could sit in the dark, listen to it, maybe have those cute little lights plugged in and just kind of stare at it and let the music take you.
I know
That's when I
exactly.
feel like I've had the most fun too.
Yeah, I know exactly what you mean, and that is like it. See, you say that word, I get the vibe. I know what you're talking about. I
Yeah.
know what we're going for here. And then the R&B just
Hmm.
kind of throws the actual like taste on it, like the genre, the
Yeah.
actual category.
Hmm.
But you've taken yourself
Exactly.
within that category and narrowed it down even more. Now look at that.
Yeah, I'll take the props. Thank you very much.
um, is there a song that you've released that you think best embodies who you are as an artist? Like your one song sample platter?
Hmm, that's tricky. Um, on the one hand, I feel like I've written my best work with my best friend. She's also a vocalist and a writer. Um, she wrote a song with me that's on my EP called Higher. It's an interlude.
You get me high, higher than I've ever been. You get me high, higher than I've ever been. Your taste is like liquor, you make me a sinner. Don't know what it is about you. Don't know what it is. Ooh, can't sleep, you're what I need, my remedy. Don't leave me sober, just come on over. You keep me hypnotized when we be loving. It's like heaven is raining down, not even scared to drown. I'm jonesing for the feeling you give me, living in ecstasy. You get me high, higher than I've ever been. You get me high, higher than I've ever been.
People still get mad at me for it not being longer, but it felt like it was just like enough of just like a little something to kind of fill in like what I think dreamscape actually means, where like the harmonies kind of carry majority of the song and like you feel like you're being lifted, you feel like you're going somewhere. Um, yeah, I feel like that's me. Yeah.
I like that. I love a good interlude too. They're just like the right dose of like just a little something, not too much.
Hmm.
Doesn't need to be a whole thing. Just like, let me just do this for like a minute or two and then we'll
Yeah,
call it good.
yeah,
Let me just have my moment
yeah.
and then we'll continue on with the rest of the scheduled program here. You know,
Hmm. Yeah,
just a nice little intermission.
exactly. Yeah. Because like you can get lost in trying to fill in a good like 3 to 4 minute, sometimes 5 minute song. And I think that's kind of where I get stuck in the writing process, trying to make it feel full when sometimes it doesn't even need to be that long. It could be a 1 to 2 minute thing. And that's just, the right amount for that specific song.
Yeah, I think sometimes like ideas just need to be this short little thing and it's like
Hmm.
there was a girl I had on previously that was like had just songs that not necessarily were described as interludes, but just were like these like minute 30 like short little things and it was just like
Yeah.
if like you can't forcing it to be anything longer and trying to complete this as like a full work is like going to do
Yeah.
more harm than good. Like you can totally just let it
Yeah.
exist in this little short time span and just let that idea be a thing.
Exactly. Yeah.
And sometimes that's all it needs. It's just that little thing.
Yeah, it's like adding, for me, it's like my favorite spice is cinnamon. So like if you add just the right amount of cinnamon to like the most amazing dessert you can think of, and it's just like bloop, a little nice something to top it off. And then,
Exactly.
because if you put too much, then it's like you're hacking, it's the cinnamon challenge. Like you don't need that much. So
Exactly. We don't need to be putting these cinnamon challenges on albums.
no, thank you.
If you had to pick two or three artists that you think your music is like a combination of,
Mhm.
who would it be?
Mm. Main inspiration for sure is Brandy. Um, I think, let's see, let's bring it a little more current because that's where my vibes come from now. But I think if I had to choose a couple more, I would go with her and a dash of Kehlani, but more of her like not necessarily like hype on the borderline of hip hop music, but more of her pensive, like thought-provoking songs.
A nice taste of the OG, a nice
Mm-hmm.
flavor of modern day.
Yeah,
Boom. And then maybe
that's
something else
me.
for a little cinnamon. Who knows?
There you go. Yep.
Just to, change it up a little bit, have a little fun with it, but not too much. Not too
Yeah,
much.
just enough.
Just enough. What aspects of each of those two do you think is like the most prominent in your artistry and your songs?
Mhm. I think uh Kehlani specifically has a way of the flow of her lyrics has always really like hit me, just like kind of like a gut punch, but in like the best possible way. Um, Very thought-provoking. The not necessarily like vocab words that she chooses, but just the way she structures what she's saying and how it all comes together as a collective piece of work is how I hope to make sure that my music is. So something that is thought-provoking, but also palatable, um, gets you in the feels, that kind of thing. Her, it's gotta be her voice. She has a really strong, like alto voice. So her writing is incredible also, but it's her voice on top of the words is what I feel impacts me the most. And I feel like I carry that into my music as well. Um, and if we go back to Brandy, it's got to be honestly her ad lib and harmony choices. Those are top tier, top tier. Someone tried to argue with me that she wasn't that good, and I almost got into a fight that day. So
So that's the hill that you will die on.
that's the hill I will die on. She is not called the vocal Bible for nothing.
I packaging all those up into one is like that's that's some heavy hitting.
Yeah, yeah, that is the ultimate goal is to have a body of work that can stand with them and it not seem like it is copy and paste, but that you can tell that it's me, but you can hear the influences.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's a great sort of target to have on the mark is it's like,
Hmm.
I put me up there, put me in conversation, but don't like
Hmm.
it's not like because I'm matching any of those
Yeah,
names. It's like
exactly.
take the flavor from here, here, and here, and then we're talking. Then
Yeah,
we're good.
yeah.
That's the goal. That's the target.
Yeah,
All we want.
exactly.
It's all we want. What is an outside passion of yours that you feel impacts who you are as an artist?
Mm. It's gotta be reading. Um, College really knocked the fun out of reading for me, but I'm slowly starting to get back into it. Um, Funny enough with video games. Um, I'm starting to play more visual novel games. So it's kind of like a choose your own adventure kind of thing where you get to decide what the character does, how it impacts the story later. Um, and sometimes, depending on if you are away from it for a certain period of time, you won't remember what you did before. So you'll have to go back and say, okay, what did I do? Did I mess something up? Did I do something that I didn't want to do? Could this actually be an interesting turn? That kind of thing.
That sounds kind of like the music making process a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's why I was drawn to it so much. Uh, but at first, it was really just to kind of get away from the hustle and bustle of life. Like, work is busy, trying to make sure you spend the right amount of time with your family and friends. Like, that's a juggling act. So, having that moment where you can just kind of like chill out and say, like, I'm not exactly focused on what's going on in my life right now. I can focus on this character and what they're doing. And then shape the world as you see fit. And then, yeah, yeah, I can take that back to music and say, how do I want to structure what I'm doing now?
No, that's yeah, as soon as you were saying that, I was like, I know we're still talking about video games here, but I was like, I feel like you're like trying to paint this as a picture of like it also kind of sounds like putting a song together or working on a new like project. I'm like, yeah, this
I
this
mean,
sounds like I've been experiencing this exact same thing.
it's like funny that you say that because that wasn't the intent actually, but it works.
I was like, she's got to be painting parallels here. Like, there's got to be some sort of like, I'm hearing this, but I'm also thinking of it this way. Like, there's got to be. It sounds a lot
Yeah.
because it's like, that's how it goes. It's like you can't progress on a project, and so it's like, let's just put it on hold.
Hmm.
We'll revisit it another time. Sometimes that's just
Hmm.
what you got to do to get the right thing out. Like, you
Yeah.
can try and force it till you're blue in the face, but that song is not going to happen the way that you want it to until you let it breathe and let it do the things that it needs to do. let
Yeah.
her
I
let
really
her
didn't even think
figure
about it
herself
that way.
out, and she'll just happen. And then it's like you come
Yeah.
back to it however long after the fact, and it's like, okay, now I can approach this with the new idea, and that's going to exactly give me what I want. She's good. We can continue
Yeah.
the adventure.
I really did not think about it that way. That is so funny.
I was like, it's painted perfectly to be just like that. That's really funny that you had zero intention of making it sound that way.
Yeah, that was like, I was just thinking about, oh yeah, like this video game is fun. I remember when I did that thing, and that's like ties all into my analogy. And then I was like,
It's
oh, oh, cool. Okay. Went back to music every time.
It does. It just does. You can paint a lot of parallels there, though. So, um, this is the part where I go back to the question that last week's artist asked for this week's artist. So, last week's artist's question for this week's artists, you, is what have been some of your takeaways from successes and or failures, and what advice would you give to anyone starting out?
Mm, man, kudos to them because that is a great question. Um, Takeaways. I feel like I should do successes and failures. I feel like that's pretty well-rounded. Takeaways from successes, trust yourself. You have a plan, you know what you're doing, you have a vision for what you want your music to be. Trust yourself in that. Don't let somebody else try to dictate what you should do when you know it's not something you're comfortable with or it's just not your vibe. Um, yeah, let your music speak for itself and trust that. Uh, Failures. Make sure to protect yourself as much as possible. Um, that goes along with trusting yourself, but just like having that intuition in a specific situation. If you feel like something is going really well, great. If something isn't going so hot, maybe think about what caused that problem and then going into the next situation, how can you prepare better going into what you have coming up next? Yeah, that would be my advice. Some that I think is more, you have to live it to understand, but if you can take from that and see how it's applicable to yourself before you've gone through it, kudos to you.
So live and learn, trust the gut,
Yeah.
and stick to the plan.
Mm-hmm. There you go.
Just all the wise words, all the wise words. I love that. Um, oh, I'm sorry. What is your question for the next artist?
Mm, what is my question? If you could make a song based off of, say, like we were saying, like cinnamon before, right? Like, what is, what would you categorize your music as a spice? So if you had to make a dish and you're like, okay, this song is perfect, would it be parsley? Would it be thyme? Would it be sage? Would it be salt and pepper? What would it be?
That one is gonna be a funny one for sure. I'm not ready for that one for next time. Okay. Good luck to whoever has to answer that. Um,
I will be checking answers.
what is it that you think sets you apart from other independent artists? And before we dive into, I think people often assume that I mean like in a like hierarchy kind of way. I just mean in a like
Yeah.
category of one separation, indifference kind
Mhm.
of way, not in a I'm better than everyone else. Because nobody
Right.
wants to say that they're better
Yeah.
than everyone else, and I get that.
I've also hated that in general. Honestly, my biggest fear is becoming an egotistical person. Like, that's something that I'm genuinely terrified of because you see how people change when they get, certain accolades and, obviously it's not true for everyone, but that's, yeah, deep fear of mine. But uh what sets me apart? Probably the amount of times you said I'm analytical. So I'd say, yeah, how analytical I am about pretty much everything. Um, And that could be in the best of ways and the worst of ways. Um, but I think that it has really helped me understand how I want to portray my art. Um, and it may, I guess, come at points where I have to really stop myself from being so analytical sometimes. But yeah, I think my analysis helps me do good music, but it also can stop me from finishing other projects too.
I was gonna say, would you describe yourself as a perfectionist?
I can be sometimes.
Yeah.
Mainly during the writing process. I like when I'm in the studio, it's a lot less intense. I think it really have to give kudos to my dad because at any point he could, as a child, he would tell me and my siblings to think before you act and think before you speak. So I took that really seriously and applied it to literally everything.
It's wise words. It's good to think things through before
Wise,
you
but
just, yeah, a little
fly off
impulse
the
is good
handle.
every once in a while. A little impulse is good at times, but
Yeah,
also don't want to say something and then instantly be like, "Oh, that
I
really should not
regret
have
that.
rolled
Yeah,
off my
exactly.
tongue."
Hmm.
But we all do that, so that's life.
Yeah, yeah, that's life. I need to add a little more impulse to, yeah.
A little less analysis, a little more just do it.
2024. Yep, 2024, my year of impulse.
I am not taking credit for that advice. I will not be responsible for the consequences of those actions.
I'll probably still add a little bit of analysis in there so I don't get in too much trouble.
What impact do you ultimately want to have with your music and with your artistry?
I want to feel close to people. Um, being a military kid, I was used to moving around all the time. I would make friends, have to leave, lose contact with them. Uh, so I never really felt like I was stable in a sense of like true camaraderie with people. Um, and I mean, as I got older, probably like middle school, high school age, I was really closed off because I didn't want to invest in people and then leave. So that's really where writing came in, I guess on like on a emotional perspective. But um yeah, I want to feel like I can actually have a true connection with people and maybe be okay with not always being understood, but at least being able to say like, you know, we probably have a similar experience in this particular realm. You could share something with me that maybe at the time when I wrote the song that I didn't know. Um, and then I can give perspective on what I learned from the experience I went through and whether that turns into like a full-blown, friendship or not, it's still something I can learn from. And yeah, yeah, connection.
I think that's like also bringing it full circle back to like where kind of the conversation started and where the writing started. But that's also, I think
Mm-hmm.
that's one of the most like genuine and intentional sorts of like approaches you can take to doing this sort of
Mm-hmm.
thing is it's like you want it to impact the people consuming it. You want it to,
Mm-hmm.
you know, it's kind of like uh an olive branch, but not in the like peace offering, we had beef and now we're squashing it kind of way, but like in a like, hey, like I'm offering up some personal information here.
hmm
Enjoy, connect with it. You know, you and I are not too different. We're on the same page here. We've experienced the same things. We felt the same ways. Here, you can have take the
Yeah.
olive branch. So,
Yeah.
um, probably could have articulated that in a better way, but you know what I mean.
I mean,
Um,
yeah, I totally get what you're saying. Yeah, I think that as I started maturing a little more, it became more about like that passion to connect with people. At first, it was just like, oh, I just kind of want to get my thoughts out on paper. But then I'm like, actually, people go through stuff, and I can't be the only person feeling this way. I can't be the only person who's had this experience. I'm sure other people have too. And I mean, it's a way to feel less alone when, certain situations can make you feel like you're by yourself.
yeah. I mean, music is like something you can lean on regardless of the circumstances. You know,
hmm
that's always going to be in your back pocket.
Yeah.
That's the really cool thing about it and kind of the purpose that it can serve when needed.
hmm Yeah.
I think that brings us to the last overarching question, which is why music?
Why music? Um, yes, connection, but I feel like music has a way of connecting people that other mediums don't. Um, I think just as musicians, we have kind of like a cool superpower where the words that you use or don't use, um, and the music, the melodies you choose, they speak. At least, from my heart, I feel like they speak. And, I feel like that's why certain melodies or, harmony choices create a certain emotion. Um, they speak to you. And even though visual art can speak, um, you know, literature can speak, literature is words. But I think that music has a way of sticking with you because at any given point when a song really impacted you, you know where you were, you remember who you were with, you remember the things that were going on in your life and why you connected with it. So, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's to paraphrase one of the greats, I believe Maya Angelou said that it's not people will not remember what you said or what you did. They'll remember how you made them feel. Something like that.
hmm
It's like
hmm
100%. It's like you're not necessarily going to remember, you know, every detail of the song or something like that. Like at some point you're going to know all the words because that's how it goes. There's a
Yeah.
certain part of your brain that's just built for remembering lyrics and that's it. But you're going to remember the like emotional impact that came along with that more than anything else.
hmm
And that's like what's really cool about it is it's like this medium of just transferring this sort of message, meaning, whatever, that just
Yeah.
conveys all of that in this nice, sonically pleasing package.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Um, I know for me, the songs that I was listening to as a teenager really, like to this day, stick with me. I remember, whether it was like a love song or like a sad song or whatever, like I know what I was going through at the time. I remember who I was with. I remember you know, every, maybe not even every instance, but just like the core of what I was experiencing and how those songs helped me get through it.
Yeah. It's there are certain songs that can just take you back to wherever you
Mhm.
were when you experienced them for the first time, or when you were like really into those songs. And it's
Yeah,
crazy how those, like, you could just have a time capsule that's just music. It's crazy.
yeah, yeah. That is something I hope to do. I'll say for myself, like have a time capsule of my own catalog and say, I was here at this time. Okay, now I was here at this time. Right now, I feel like this, and have it almost be like a diary.
Yeah. Yeah, it's really cool to look back and be like, remember when you wrote something, or and then just
Hmm.
like, it's like, look at now versus like where that like status was, where I
Yeah.
was at the time that like this song was a reality. Like, look at how things have changed.
Hmm.
Or even also just from like a
Yeah.
sonic perspective, like looking back at your older stuff and being like, she's not as good as the new stuff, but that's a good thing. We've grown enough. We've grown enough. So
Exactly. You
yeah.
can hear the growth. It's almost like Facebook memories, how cringy those can be. Um,
Yeah. Oh man. Well, I think that brings us to the end of this episode of the Why Music podcast. Check back again next week for another conversation with another independent artist. Thanks for listening.